I think when you look at businesses and you look at the world that we're in, and maybe you look at the mental health areas, those two paths don't cross very often. And sometimes a lot of employers don't want those paths to cross, or maybe the mental health agencies don't, but it's a natural fit.
When I sat down with employers, I was, first of all, amazed at how little they knew about the services that we provide. And when I began to list the alcohol and drug programs that we had, early intervention programs, mental health programs, and then told them how their employees could take advantage of those programs with no cost to them. They couldn't believe that all this was here all this time and they didn't know about it. Business owners are so busy doing their business, working the jobs, getting new work, that this doesn't really fit into their radar.
So we've got a population that is at risk. We also have a population that's unemployable, and some of that population are in those circumstances because of excessive drug and alcohol use. If we could have ADAM boards, if we can have our communities, if we can have our mental health systems be able to get individuals back to an employable state, we, again, economically could flourish. Our businesses and our communities are a source of great energy, great talent, great skills, whatever it is that they do to make money and put more taxes into the system. Individuals who get an opportunity to have tax resources in their hands, I would love for them to really look at business as a partner with them. Figure out how we can help each other, because the ultimate bottom line is, in order for us to stay healthy and viable as an economic base to raise our families, our communities have to be clean and sober.
I believe that business is a partner in this whole issue of substance abuse, because businesses drive the economy. The businesses need workers. The workers bring home money, they spend money in the stores. The workers own homes, they pay taxes. And so when we can get the businesses to help the employees understand the whole issue of how the drug-free workplace programs are not just there to stop you from doing something wrong, it also helps you to maintain a better lifestyle.
Well, the drug-free program that we had prior was just basically the guidelines that workers' comp set so that we could get our percentage. And it just didn't seem thorough enough. So we wanted something a little more extensive. We wanted something that was going to really look at all of the problems with drugs and alcohol in the workplace, and then also have some type of an alternative program, someplace we could refer or have that back support for what we were needing. So just something more comprehensive and thorough. Prior to actually going through the comprehensive program with our management, we had that drug-free safety program where our second chance agreement failed. It would take 3 weeks for our employee to get in if they did choose to sign the second chance agreement based on a positive drug screen. So with that 3 weeks, a lot of things happened. He was off work because he had to have a clean reentry before he could come back. He wasn't getting any counseling for that period of time. And so a lot of times he would quit or he would go find another job. And so it really wasn't supporting what we were trying to accomplish.
I think that being a substance-free workplace changes the norms and the culture as for a company, because once you go through the training and once you've been a part of it for a while, you can almost visibly see it. And then they start reaching out to you more as the employer or as the HR representative to say, I've got this going on. Do you know how I could find help, or do you have anybody that you would recommend, or who would you reach out to for this? So that's where that culture shift is. They're not afraid then to ask, because that stigma is somewhat gone.
In order for us to have our workplace at Elford have drug and alcohol-free sort of DNA is one that everybody understands there's a business case for it. I believe that with communication, with this collaboration instead of competition between the resource groups, that we actually could get drug and alcohol-free DNA infused throughout Ohio. And that would help all of us flourish.
The role of business is an evolving thing for us as executives of Adams boards or mental health and recovery services boards, that business gives us access to employees, supervisors, and even families to talk a little bit about drugs, prevention of drug abuse, and an opportunity for us to really solidify a workforce that is competent and available. I think that's the biggest challenge all of us have. One of the questions that employers ask me is, how can I help employees who fail a drug screen? That's a new question, and it's an area that we're not that comfortable with right yet.
We help a lot of people get jobs. We have 18 different offices in Northwest Ohio. Last year we had about 7,000 people that we employed at 250 companies, again in Northwest Ohio. Mike was hearing a lot of stories about companies needing employees, and they couldn't find them because too many of them were drug tested and they failed the drug test. So one day he came to our office and he said, "Tell me about this with Spherion. Are you experiencing this same problem?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, yes, this is a huge problem. Drug testing, we eliminate 50% of the people sometimes." So Mike knew this was a real opportunity.
We've been doing we call it We Care at Work, but it's a drug-free workplace program in Allen, Auglaize, and Hardin counties for about 3 years. And what I have learned over the course of those 3 years, come out to their place of business, sit down for a half an hour, and talk about services available and how a drug-free workplace program can not only help them retain and hire employees, but also help us keep people drug-free, keep them with their families, and keep them on the job. The business community hasn't been as easy to talk to, partly because we haven't found, in the past, we haven't found kind of a niche for us with them. So I went to each Chamber of Commerce and I explained to them the program, and within 10 minutes, all the chambers said, "No, this is a big problem." They were all willing to get on board. For the most part, it was a half an hour meet with the business owner and the HR director, and about 20 minutes into it, they got it. Now I had an employer, the HR person, and probably other people on the staff or employees who now saw the mental health board and our programs as a benefit to them. So it was almost like, oh, so this is why we vote for your levy. They saw me as an asset. There was a mutual benefit, because I told them if I can get an employee into treatment early, I have 100% better chance of returning them to the workplace drug-free than if they get fired, get passed on to another employer who then fires them, and they never get treatment. I divert all these people from a criminal justice system that makes it much more difficult for us. So we're not looking for the big Fords or Hondas. They have a corporate structure that, and we're not going to be in with them. We're interested in the small business owner who has maybe 50 employees, maybe 100, maybe less, who can't afford a big attorney from Columbus to work out their drug-free workplace program for them. And those are the ones that are most interested, because they recognize the fact that they could never afford this. So for each one of those employers, You know, there's 20 to 50 employees. Each one of those employees, many of them have a family. So now we're impacting that person's family. So add another 4 or 5 people onto that, and just in that one employer. I don't think I'll ever really know the impact that this is going to have. Maybe prevented kids from getting involved in substance abuse in school because dad came home or mom came home and talked about what they learned at work. There's a mutual benefit. If you're able to retain a good employee who's maybe made a mistake or maybe has a problem you didn't even know existed, how much less will you have to pay to recruit, hire, train, and get a new employee in place? The earlier I get somebody into treatment, the more successful I'm going to be. A parent who goes and talks to their child about drugs, that child is 50% less likely to use. I'm less likely to see that person in our treatment programs. So there's a cost benefit to the community, there's a cost benefit to the business, and there's a huge cost benefit to the mental health and recovery services in our communities.
One of the things that scares the dickens out of me right now is this medical marijuana thing and how we're going to deal with that with, you know, all the sensitive areas that I have in my business. Driving trucks, I'm held liable for that. So this drug-free work program that we're on addresses that on a continuous basis.
Being a drug-free workplace has changed our culture in that the thought, again, that we would ever need it was very remote in most of our minds. I'm talking about, you know, myself as the executive director, our board of directors. It just wasn't even something that anyone thought about. But then once we did, and then within 2 days we had this issue, it really it made all of us think a lot about it. So we're realizing that we are in a community that does have issues.
Good help is hard to find. A person tests positive doesn't mean that they are a bad person. They've got issues. There could be issues at home. You got domestic issues, financial issues, other health issues that are impacting their lives, and yet they have a valuable skill. So rather than to throw them on the junk heap, if we can get that gentleman or that lady to get those, manage that, then they can return to work and continue to be productive in society, continue to provide for their families, you know, be that stable influence in their home, because that income is a stabilizing factor. And with it, you get a certain degree of stability. Without it, there's a lot of instability.
Within our restore on any given day, we may have volunteers from Job and Family Services that are helping to earn their food assistance. We may have community service volunteers from the court system who may have had they may even have drug convictions. So this has really been helpful for us to have this policy in place so that, you know, if we run into issues with any of those folks, we know what to do.
Our role as an employer within the whole mess of drugs is just as important as the parent. So as an employer, I mean, you're handling these people 8 hours a day, sometimes longer, 5 days a week. You've got to make the impact, you've got to influence them, and you've got to support.
The reason why we wanted to become a drug-free workplace was because we were starting to notice some trends. We were noticing high absenteeism on certain days of the week. We were noticing theft of items. One of the things we noticed about the prescription drug issue was that some of the employees and probably me included, at some point or another, innocently had misused prescription drugs. Innocently, but illegally. Somebody would give their prescription drug to a family member. They've got a headache or a bad pain, and they said, well, here, why don't you take one of these and see if this works? They were doing it. Sometimes they were doing it because they didn't have other medical, access to medical care. And so they would, give a friend or a relative their medication. Again, not trying to get high, but just trying to get through the day. We hope that our training at work does filter back home. We arm them with that information and tell them to be careful, be conscious, especially the issue about the prescription drugs, because there's a lot of families that share medicines.
So there's a business case for businesses to have great drug-free workplaces that also reach and kind of tentacle out beyond that to be able to be a community resource for their employees. Our employee training includes information about how they themselves can be substance-free, but also, in my opinion, equally or maybe more important, how they can be a resource to friends, family, neighbors who are in situations where they may have someone at risk. Our employees who are knowledgeable about where helping resources are, we take and carve out a piece of every single annual training program for employees and really key on something important or urgent about what's happening out there in the community. So we've done a variety of different things. 2 years ago, we got a chance to really put out the Start Talking Ohio initiative so parents can be educated about what their kids face, and both the pain and suffering that many of those parents have had to go through, as well as early warning signs that they missed and the consequences in their families of losing kids, and loss can be in a variety of ways. One year we had a panel presentation because a lot of people said, well, I don't know what drug treatment could be.
The cost of bringing the employees in is the cost of doing business. We have to furnish safety glasses, and we have to have hard hats, and we have to make sure that they have seat belts on in the trucks. It's part of the safety culture of the company. At the end of the day, if we can avoid an incident because of a person that might be coming to work impaired, it's worth it, because that can be millions of dollars.
I think one of the most useful classes was just in the last few years when Jim Ryan came. And I specifically asked him to speak about alcohol because, as I said, I know it's the drug of choice at Spillman. And I'd never really understood before that alcoholism, with the more you consume, the more your body tolerates the alcohol. Alcohol is really an illness. I think I'd heard it before, but you and Karen explained it so clearly, that it's an illness. And drugs really are the same. We make mistakes, we shoot up, we drink too much, and it becomes a pleasurable habit, and then it becomes an addiction. And it's something that, without help, most people can't fight.
It's amazing to me, having done this for 15 years, where you send out those invites and you're like, okay, it's time for substance-free workplace training. They kind of get jazzed because they realize, oh, it's going to be a different topic. What are we learning about this year, Angie? It's a serious subject, but people start to respect and understand why, what's the methodology behind putting this policy in place. It's not to invade their personal privacy. It's really, you're doing it because you care about them and you're trying to make them better and even provide them information for their kids. I mean, there's all sorts of things that they learn and they take and go back and like, wow, I mean, I didn't realize that that was an option for me with my kids to sign up for these email alerts, or I didn't know that drug was going by that name, or if my kid texted this, that I need to be worried. I mean, they don't know, and I can't tell you how many times we always walk out of those training classes going, huh, and you can apply it not only professionally, but in your personal life as well.
I think with the training, the employees were able to help identify not only problems that may occur at work, but they could also look to their children or their grandchildren to see if they have a problem.
I don't think people know that the services are out there. I just don't think that they're aware of it. With the training that we give our employees, if they have a child or if they have someone else in their family that has an issue like this, they have a resource, they know of a resource that they can go to.
I think that the philosophy for when someone tests positive from an employer standpoint is that, you know, sometimes people just make really bad decisions, and is there really a problem, or did they just screw up? So you kind of got to get to the root of the problem and understand what's happening, and that's where those partners that you have that are trained professionals for identifying when there's a problem. If that person does have a problem, let's figure out how we can help them get rid of the problem, get back to work, and start, you know, functioning and performing at their top capacity. I think that as far as the cost goes, I think if you get rid of that problem and not the person, it makes more sense long term and is the better cost savings for the company moving forward.
We found out that 70% of our workforce was using at some point, whether recreationally, daily, and we actually had a couple people selling, and sometimes selling on the floor. You know, we anticipated losing a lot of employees because of incorporating the new program, but honestly, a lot of them just stepped up to the plate. We have a lot of employees who have been here a significant amount of time, and I think there was a handful of employees too that wanted to see the change, that were concerned about the problem that was in the plant. And that's one of the big things we noticed too, is that our productivity turned around.
We've chosen not to throw somebody out of our employment if they test positive, because it's so hard to get good employees today. And it costs us an awful lot less money if we can keep an employee instead of trying to retrain an employee. So it's a lot less expensive for us to give them a second chance than to go train a new employee. We've had real good success with it. I'd say we've had close to, if not 100% success in doing this.
Well, one of our associates actually tested positive for marijuana after he was assessed. They recommended classes through the community. He came back clean, and he's never tested positive since. And he's now not just a worker in production, but he now does quality control for Spillman. A man who's probably been with us 15 years. He too had trouble with alcohol. He's been clean now and he gave up tobacco too. Been clean it's been at least 3 years. These are people who are really capable individuals. We wanted them in our workforce. We wanted them working with us.
Employers are kind of a front line on drugs. People always have to have a job to support their families. So we as employers, if we can stop that drug abuse or maybe educate some of the employees or potential employees, they can carry that back with them to their families and maybe help the community better overall. We'll actually offer help and assistance to the potential employee. Even if they're not our employee yet, it still gives them a chance to maybe seek help and better themselves and ultimately help our community. An employee comes to us and applies, and we find out that they are testing positive for drugs. Our old policy didn't allow us much leeway. It was, you're not getting a job. Now, with the new Working Partners program, we can actually refer them and help them. And so they're just not being bumped down the line or trickled down the line to the next employer who doesn't drug test. And I think we're actually stopping those people in our community from maybe even abusing drugs or continuing on the abuse.
And it starts from the very beginning. Yes, you are going to have to take a drug test. From that, if they fail that drug test, we will refer them on to different help. And that's where the relationship with that we have with Mike and many other We Care facilities and organizations has been huge. We give a person a second chance. They can come back with no problem and get a job. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity.